Hi again. Welcome back to my studio. We're going to do drawing lesson number 5, art lesson number 5. And today we want to talk about drawing again, but we're going to talk about doing tone drawings. But before I do, just let me refresh your memory. We're going back to lesson 1. We talked about how to create a color wheel. Lesson 2, we talked about how to create a tone scale, which is very important to what we're going to be doing in this lesson, working with tone. Lesson 3, we talked about using our 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, to build a color palette that would be what you call painting in key or harmoniously together. In our last lesson, we started drawing class and we worked on a simple line drawing, just setting up some objects and trying to get the shapes and the proportions correct together. So this lesson, we want to actually talk to you about doing tone drawings and give you some examples. This actually is a wash. It's a pen and ink wash, so it's got a strong line drawing, but then the ink was used to wash in the tone. So it's just a black and white, and it's working with tone. You can see why perhaps that is an important skill in developing working with color, because you have colors as that one more step of complexity. You're putting color to it, but colors also have tone, and they need to say the right thing in the tone. This is just another pen and ink drawing. Working with tone. Here's a pencil sketch of yours truly. I did some years ago, just sitting in front of a mirror and drawing what I saw. You see a lot of tone in that. If I look through this sketchbook, we can see examples of other good, strong tone drawing. Here's one here of a candle. I just let the candle burn in the dark and drew it, so you can see how we use tone, the really heavy dark tones, to indicate the darker areas that we were seeing, and then no tone at all, just white area there to indicate the whites. Let's see here. Here is a portrait study. You can see again all tone, just straight drawing, but using tone and shading. Here's a nice one that's also very tonal, very strong tonal. It's a drawing of my old work boots sitting on the floor. Anything can be a suitable subject to draw. It doesn't matter that it looks very artistic. It's what you do with the drawing. Here's a drawing of one of my daughters, Rhonda, working at the computer. I sat and drew her while she was working. Here's a nice tone drawing of one of my cats that is no longer with us, but we loved her, tar baby. All right, so we're going to be working with tone. A little trick to help us draw. I created this drawing grid. And for those of you that like to get the exact dimensions of everything, you can see what I've done here. I've taken a piece of board and I've cut it and marked it off evenly in 1-inch squares and threaded it with threads like that. So what you do is you hold it up to whatever it is that you want to draw. You create the same threads lightly on your paper, the same grid pattern on your paper, and then use this drawing grid. Use that drawing grid to help you, and that's better, to help you see where the objects are so you can correctly locate them. That's a little trick if you want to get really complicated. A couple of other things that I wanted to show you here before we get started. This is just a pencil sketch. Again, line drawing, but we're using some tone in there as well. This is what we're going to be doing tonight. This is an example of a tone sketch, and it's done with Conte crayons. So we're going to be working with Conte crayons tonight, and we're going to be working with tone. This is the kind of idea that we're looking to do when we're using tone. You can see how clearly the bottle looks like a bottle because of the transparency of the glass and of the darkness where actually we saw darken the bottle. You can see the fruit on there and how it's shaded to look like the fruit and so forth. You get the idea. Now, our drawing surface is what we're going to draw on. You may, your kids particularly, you just may have an old doodle pad or sketch pad. This actually is not a bad one. Simple, you know, you can buy these at dollar stores, and this has newsprint. So newsprint is fairly rough, a little bit rough. And when we talk about a good drawing surface, if you're using a really hard white paper, you can draw things on that. But for pencil drawing and for crayon drawing, you want paper that has tooth. The really hard paper is good for like ink, pen and ink. But a paper that is rough, kind of like newsprint, it's rough when you feel it. We call that surface is called tooth. Tooth, like teeth, tooth. And it's really good for grabbing the pigment. And as you scrape, you draw your crayon over it, or you're drawing over it, it grabs the pigment and it holds it on there instead of just sliding across the really smooth surface. So for good drawings, you want to get paper that's a little rough. Get a sketch pad that's a drawing sketch pad, and it's got rough paper in it, so it's got tooth. All right, so we're going to be working with, or I'm going to be working with something called Conte crayons. You can see here is an array of tones. These are called Conte crayons. You can buy them in the art store. They're a little bit expensive, but they're really good for tone drawings. However, if you don't have Conte crayons, you can use charcoal. Is also great for what we're going to be doing. And maybe you don't have that, but maybe your art kit has a box of pastels. You got some pastels. You can use pastels as well for the kind of work that we're going to be doing. All right. This is my old drawing kit here. I keep all my crayons and stuff, pencils or charcoal in this kit. All right, so we're gonna start our project. Let me just, I'll move that out of the way so it's not distracting to you. All right. All right, so the object of this lesson is to draw in tone, but much like we did the last time, we want to roughly sketch in the objects and get the dimensions as proportional as possible and in the right places. So don't worry about it too much. If you know you are struggling with this concept, remember the key to drawing and drawing well and developing skill is practice, practice, practice. Now, your perspective of this still life that I've set up is different from mine. You're seeing it off at this angle here. I'm seeing it more straight on this way. So what I'm going to do on the paper will look a little bit different than what you see, but that's all right. You can draw from this if you want, or you can set up your own still life. You can watch what I've done and set up your own still life and work with it. All right, so let me get started. I'm going to basically define the bottom edge of the pan here. Just kind of get where that's going to go. Want to get where that's going to go. And I also want to I want to get the size of that. This, you can see I'm just sketching lightly on my paper, making light marks approximately where I want that line to be, that edge to be. So right now I'm just trying to roughly calculate the size of that. Now, an important concept of drawing is also to work with big shapes and then reduce them down to smaller shapes. You start with a big shape and then you begin to fill it in with detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly mark the top of this pan with the peppers in it. Just kind of rough that shape in. So I'm considering all this to be one shape. All right, so now I need to get the shape of my jug, which is next to it. I'm going to start with a circle here where the body of the jug is. Try to get that about right. So that's up here somewhere, and I'm going to try to get the right size in there. So if I got the shoulder of that jug, the circle of that jug circled in there, I know pretty much where that is. So that's just roughly a circle. And I'll show you what I've done in a minute. So now I want to get the bottom edge of that jug, which I know is not the same as the bottom edge of the pan. So it's about in here somewhere. So I'm just going to make a line there. Now, once I've got that, I can also now begin to mark the sides of the jug a little bit. I'm not going to be too worried about the top, but I'll tell you what I will do. I want to find the center of the jug. And so I'm going to draw a center line through it, and I'm going to extend it up above because I know the center of that neck needs to be based on the center of the jug. All right, so now I've got that jug roughly shouldered in. I can now look at the handle as a circle. And I'm just going to place that there on the edge a little bit, a circle for the handle. All right, so now I've got two of my main shapes in. Now I just need to do the little pitcher. It's behind the other, behind the peppers. All right, so I want to kind of locate the top of that picture. And I know the top of that picture, from my perspective, is about halfway down the circle of that handle. So I'm just going to mark the top a little bit. Now I know where the top is. I'm going to mark the shoulder of that picture, just roughly on the paper. Get the shoulder right. Now I can mark the handle. And I'm actually going to need to move the whole thing over because there is a negative space. So right about where I got that shoulder is actually where that handle needs to be, which means I need to move the shoulder over this way. And this is okay. When you're working with Conte crayons, you can rub things out pretty good. And anyway, this is only just roughly putting things down where I want them to be. All right, so I'm going to hold this up for you to see so far my marks on the paper. You can see that they're just very light and sketchy, keeping things fluid. We're going to now begin to reduce those shapes into smaller shapes. And where I want to do that is on the peppers themselves. So I'm going to look at that picture and I'm going to see about where that green pepper is. And I can look at that picture, that pepper, and that pepper has several shapes to it. The lobes of the pepper are shapes. Now I can shape those in roughly. Now I got the green one shaped in. I'm going to work on the red one here. And I know that that's coming down. The bottom of that is lower than the green one. And I'm going to bring it around the front. Now it has the dimple there where the vine was, where it was connected to the vine. That's a circle. I'll draw that in. I'll draw that bottom lobe in. I got that one there. All right, so now I've got the peppers where I need them to be, and now I also can know where the pan is going to be, the edge of the pan. It's going to circle around like this. Something like this. And right around that green pepper. All right, so now I know basically how my pan is going to look. There, like that. All right, I can now mark in the handles for the pan. I'll just kind of make a round oval, an oval shape where that handle is going to go. That main part of that handle is going to go for now, and I'll redefine it later as I'm going along. All right, now I'll bring that up a little closer where you can see where we've gotten so far on that. All right, so I want to work on my brown jug a bit here. The brown jug to me looks like the most fun. It's nice and dark, and I'm going to have fun with my darker Conte crayons on this one. So now I have my shapes pretty good. And let me see if this darker one will work better for me here. I have my shapes pretty good there. And now I can begin to actually fill it in. I know that the bottom of the jug looks a bit round. We learned about drawing the rounding edges in lesson 1. So I'm going to bring that around like that. And I'm going to come up on the other side. Just keep your marks fluid and sketchy. Don't worry about having everything look just so. You're going to have fun drawing, and you're going to learn as you go. All right, I want to put my handle in here. Now we're still in the roughing in stage, but when you're working with crayons like this, heavy objects, you don't get such much of a chance to correct things. You maybe some a little bit, but the accuracy of your marks is important at this point, because it is going to be whatever it is that you laid on the paper. That's what it's going to be when it's all said and done. All right, so I've got the neck of my jug about where I need it to be. I'm going to round it off the top. Come back around on the front. All right. So there. Now we have the jug roughly sketched in. I'm going to work on the pitcher next, and I want a lighter. I'm going to use a lighter pigment for the pitcher, because I know it is lighter. And I want to get this in the right place. This side is coming up over here. And up like this. Now for the blue edging, I'm going to have to get a little creative. So I don't actually have a blue color to work with. The other side comes up in over here. All right. And the top is kind of round, and it comes off to the spout. I'm going to bring that circle on around. I'm going to color it in later with a darker color, but I know that it's round right now, and so I know I have to circle it in. All right, I get the handle. The handle going off like this. All right, so here's where we are at present. We have things roughed in pretty good, and we're starting to get an idea of the tones that we're going to use in what we're doing. All right. I will come back to the jug later, because it is going to be, I think, probably a whole lot less challenging to do the jug. Let me at this point start to work on the red pepper. I'm going to choose a red Conte crayon, because that is the best color for me right now. If you don't have all these colors, that's okay. It's okay if you just have 1 or 2 colors, a dark or brick color Even if you had just a brick color Conte crayon, you could do it with that. And a white Conte crayon is really great for doing the highlights. All right, so we're going to work at coloring in the red pepper. All right. All right. Now, we look very carefully at this and closely at this, we can see that there are different tints and colors in the red pepper. For instance, there's a bit of a reflection of the background coming off the top of the red pepper. So it's not quite red. I can just see a little hint of orange in there. A little bit of orange coming in off the top and around the front lobe here where the light hits it and it's highlighted. I can see that orange coming in there. A little bit down here. And a little bit here on the high part of this lobe. So I've got that pretty well worked in. Now I can start to add some color in here. And this is where the toning, where working with tone becomes very important, because there are areas where it's darker, where the shadow hits it, and lighter where the light hits it. So it depends on how strongly you push down on your Conte crayon, the color effect that you're going to have there. And we can also use other colors to darken it as well. All right, let me get the bottom part of this. All right, now the green is a little tricky here because we don't actually have green to work with. So we want to represent that tonally a little different. I'm going to use this kind of a medium tone here just to get that idea of that green vine cap in there. And I can detail it out with the other color, the nipple there. And the edges. It's got little wavy edges to it. And little dimples and shadows in there. Now, so I need a darker color to get the shadowed part. And that won't do it. Let's try maybe this one here. Yeah, that's better. It's a little darker here where the shadow is coming out of the lobe. Then we have some shadow here where the seam of the pepper is. Got some shadow in there. And some shadow down here on the bottom part of the pepper. All right. Now, here's where it gets fun. We have highlights, white highlights there, where the light is actually hitting the edge. So I use a light Conte crayon to pick out those highlights. A little touch there. Now, let me just darken this area back here a bit more. I'm going to add just a touch of white in here to lighten this back side. I want to bring that out a little bit lighter. Now, you can use your finger, if you like, just to kind of smooth in the colors and the textures, if you like to have it smoother looking. I don't like to actually touch the highlighted part. I like that to be nice and out there, so I don't want to dim that down. All right. Got some light in here and some darker here on the bottom. All right. So here's where we've got so far with the red pepper, just in using our tones. All right. I'm going to use this stick on the green pepper, because I don't actually have green. But I don't want a real dark stick. Sketch in. those lobes. So what I'm going to do here is just color the whole thing in, and then I'm going to go, because this is going to be the lightest part of the pepper, and then I'm going to go back in with darker tones and lighter tones and build out the shadow and the contact. So for the shadow side of the pepper here, we have a much darker tone, and I need to use something like this to actually paint that tone in. And it's a pretty clear line there that we're seeing where that dark edge of the pepper goes up, something like that. We have the back side of that lobe is pretty dark. And so we're going to bring that around, darken that up. We have some dark here where the pan is, the shadow. More shadow from the red pepper hitting the green pepper on this side over here. And a little, actually, dark here on the top. So as you see, when you start to really study an object and you break it down into its various shapes, and you continue to break that object down further into various other shapes. So you're just continuously, what you're doing is going from big shapes to little shapes to smaller shapes to smaller shapes until you have the whole thing shaped in the way you want it. All right, so we have a nice shadow down here where this lobe comes in, the crease of that lobe comes in. I need that top to be a little bit darker. I'm going to trick the whole thing again with my finger, smooth in some of that tone, smooth it in. Now it's time to bring in the highlights. For this one, I want to use the white. I got some nice highlights right here on the edge where the light's hitting it, and over here, and over here, and down here. All right. Now I have a little bit of the light of the backdrop reflecting on the back side of this. So I want to capture that with a slightly different tone, different color. And I can do it with that right there. All right, so here is how things are looking so far to date with those peppers. Those were probably going to be about the hardest things to get right. So I wanted to go ahead and get those out of the way. All right, so now I'm going to start working on the pan. And I'm going to start right here where I can see a really dark shadow on the inside of the pan. I just want to get that in there. To find that edge, I'll use my black crayon for that. And let's see, I need a darker crayon. I'm going to start on the back wall of the pan over here and come around to find the rim of the pan. I'm going to draw down the edge, the bottom of the pan. So now is when we can start to really get some nice dark strokes in our drawing. All right, I'm not going to worry about the handles just yet. I am going to draw the inside, darken the inside edge as it comes around the peppers. And you'll notice that it appears darker on the top edge than it does as it descends into the pan. So I can do that with my dark Conte crayon and darken the top edge and fade it down into the pan. All right, now the pan is kind of complex, as you see there, because we have different colors going on in the pan. So on the bottom of the pan, you see some dark stuff, and we know it's a copper pan. It hasn't been polished. I'm going to have a little fun with this tone here. What I can do is roughly fill the whole thing in with this tone. Pretend that's a copper color. We know it really isn't, but I want to show a lightness there that I can work from. Now I can start to bring up some of those bottom edges that we see in there. Kind of fill that in, sketch those in with a darker tone. All right. Here's a nice, really dark one right here. All right. We have some of that descending from the top rim down, dark as well. We just kind of sketch that in, rough it in. Use your finger a little bit to smooth things and blend them. I'm going to put a little bit darker edge on the bottom of the pan. I don't want to go too heavy now because it isn't that distinct, but just to make it a little bit clear that that's the bottom edge of the pan. All right, so now let me just get this out of the way. We got these handles to deal with here. I'm not going to worry too much about the detail on them. I'm mostly concerned about the shape. Just trying to get the shapes in where I want it to be. And here's where the handle connects to the side. I'll put that in there. And then build that out a little bit. All right, we'll go over here and get this one. Drawing is so fun, and it's a lot easier than you think it is. But the important thing is to relax and have a good time and enjoy what you're doing. And you realize you're not creating a masterpiece, you're creating an exercise. And the point is that you need to draw hundreds of miles of paper and drawings before you could even really call yourself an artist. So work at it, draw. That's the important thing. Constantly draw. I'll just kind of sketch in some of the shadows there on the handle so you get an idea, that we all get an idea of the breakdown of that handle. There's a little dark edge there where that handle turns under. And then the rivet. We do the same thing over here. Now, it's not, you don't have to worry about it being perfect. And remember, it's representational. What we're doing is representational art, which fair representation is what you're striving to do. If somebody could recognize what it is that you did, then you have succeeded. You're not creating a photograph. Even the best artists don't create photographs. And really, to be honest, what's kind of dull and boring is when somebody who is very talented can take a photograph and make a painting that looks just exactly like a photograph. Well, that may be a lot of technical talent and ability in doing that, but it is also not very interesting to look at. Because you could think, why would anybody want to go to all that trouble to do that when all you had to do is take a photograph? But photographs do not see, the lens of the camera does not see what the eye sees. And anybody who does photography knows that cameras uh, cameras lengthen the horizon. Say, for instance, you see a beautiful mountain scene and trees, and it's just all high going this way, and it's so beautiful. And you take a picture of it, and when you come back and you look at your picture, it's so disappointing because everything gets squashed down because the lens of the camera flattens things out that way. All right, so I think we have a pretty fair representation of the pan and the peppers there. Uh, all right, let me work with the picture in the back a bit here. I'm going to use the brown to get the blue of the handle. And along the edge here, the blue paint, kind of stipple our strokes. Stipple, we don't want straight lines because that paint is kind of speckled and stippled. So we'll just stipple our strokes, and especially on the back edge where you don't see a lot of blue, just a little bit. All right, I can use that same mark to draw the leaves of the flowers that I'm seeing on the little picture. All right. All right. So once again, I'm going to just color this in with this lighter tone, and then I can use darker tones to develop the tonality of this picture, of the picture. Just get that in there. Smooth it in with my finger. All right, so now I can work on the shadows a little bit here. I know we got some over here. We use a little darker tone to capture that. I got some of that over in here. I got some of the shadow of the handle falls on the side of the picture. I got some here on the shoulder of the picture above the leaves. It's a little bit darker because of the shadow. And of course, we've got some on the inside of the picture. And down, deep down inside the picture, a little darker. And I'm going to go with the brown, I think. That represents the jar inside of the picture. And I have a bit of a darker shadow, really kind of dark here. And the handle is hitting the side of the picture. It's important to see all these things. I mean, shadows tell you a lot about an object and how the shadow falls on the object. That tells you a lot about that object. All right, so I want to add a little touch of tone here on the top of the handle. Now the white, we got, well, let's see here, we got to fill in a little bit under here, on the shoulder of this lid. There's some shadow we need to capture. Now the white, we got some nice bright highlights hitting on that shoulder. I want to make sure I get those with white. And then on the top, on the inside of the lid, it's a nice highlight there. A little bit here on the side of the handle. All right, I decided I needed to make the rim here just a bit darker where the blue is. Going around there. All right, we got the pitcher in there. Now we got to do is the jug. All right, we're going to use a couple of 2 or maybe 3 colors here with the jug. There's a lighter part of the jug. I'll start with the lightest color in here first. And it's basically here under the handle on the backside, a little bit on the front. We're going to capture some of the red. We're going to capture some of the red of the pepper reflecting on to the surface of the jug, right there, just above the handle of the pan. You can see just a little bit of red. I'm going to tint that. I'm going to put some red in there. All right. Back to some of the lighter pigments here. Some here on the handle. All right, we got some going off this side. Actually, I'm going to use an even lighter color here because we're picking up light off of the backdrop onto the back side of the jug here, picking up the light there. So we've got to show that. Remember, reflected light is just as important as shadow. I'm also going to get some reflected light off of the cloth that the still life is set on. I'm going to get it here on the bottom of the jug. So I'm going to fill that in a bit with some reflected light from the gray cloth. And it's going off something like that. And then there's another streak of it over here. All right, now there's a bit of it off, coming off the back of the pan right there. Now I can have fun with the darker brown. I'm going to grab my darker brown here, and I'm going to start to fill in the really heavy dark spots that I'm seeing of the brown jug. The handle's going to be a bit challenging. We have dark spots, we have light spots, and we have highlights on the handle. But for now, I'm just going to fill it in on one color basically. And this color is coming off the neck. You see it coming off the neck. And down the shoulder of the jug. We want to make sure we get the round shape correctly because that really tells us how round that jug is. Now I can begin to fill that in a bit. We start over here. Now we can have a lot of fun with different tones on this jug because actually there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here. You know, everything isn't just one color. You know, you see, your brain says that's a brown jug. But when you really study it, that brown jug is full of color. It's full of life. And that life has shape. It's very, very important. Get those shapes right. All right. So let me just start here at the top of the neck. I'm going to start to build that in. There we know that the inside of it is dark. We see that dark semicircle at the top. And then we see a nice highlight on the lip. I'm going to use a lighter color. Actually, I probably need to use maybe this one. No, it's not light enough. Try this one. We got a bit of a light color there where the light's hitting the near side of that lip. And a little bit on the back. Now I can go over here and start to have a little fun with that same color on the handle. Here on the shoulder, I'm catching quite a bit of this tone right in here. All right. Now I need, let's see here, I need to go a little bit darker. Well, and to do here, to go a bit darker. All right, so we're going to cheat a little here. We're going to put a little bit of black in. We've got to be careful that we don't go really black. We don't want to go black. But we do want to show that bottom, that dark part of the jug stands out, and that the handle of the pan, which is up against it, stands out clearly enough that we can see it. So we know that it has to be darker in here. This is tone. This is all about how to work with tone. So lesson 2 was building a tone scale, because everything consists of different degrees of tone. Even color has tone. When we understand the correlation between tone and color, that's how we can build a painting. That's how we can strengthen what we're doing to build a painting. So now this is starting to come in and read the way I want it to read. I'm having to use a bit of the dark here with a really dark heavy, but it's starting to finally get that look that I need it to have to show the difference here in the various ways that light is hitting that jug. We got a bit of a dark here on the shoulder. So I'm just scraping this Conte crayon on the side here, just a little bit to get some of that black off onto my paper. My paper has tooth, remember? Good drawing paper with tooth, because it'll grab the lead or it'll grab the pigment like you need it to grab it and scrape the pigment off so that it stays on the paper. All right, so I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to blend those tones a bit, blend them in. Not quite done. There's one thing I still have to do. Besides putting my name on it, I have to put some highlights in. Now I know I got some reflected light here hitting the bottom of the jug, but it is nowhere near that bright. It is nowhere near that bright. So I have to darken that down. Just take the Conte crayon, lay it on its side, and just scrape over the whole thing. Now that is much, much better. Much, much better. I like a little more red in here from that red pepper. Now it's time to do those delicious highlights. Before I do, I just think I need to maybe darken this back of this handle a little bit here. Not careful now, not too much. There. And maybe lighten this area down here just a bit where the red pepper's coming off. How are we doing? You following me? I think we're doing all right. Now comes the fun, putting those nice white marks where the highlights hit. Nice bright white marks. That's always the fun part. Got a nice bright one right in here. And some more here. On the shoulder, we want to be careful. We certainly want to get those highlights that are hitting the shoulder of that jug. Got a really nice, big, bright one right here. And then there's a bit of one here. All right. All right. Good. All right. So here's what we have so far. How are we looking? How do we do? Doing good. There's one more thing I would like to do. Anyway, I think I would like to do. And because it's really hard to see the edge of that jug because it's so light against the edge of the paper, I'm going to put a little shadow in here. Just build out a little shadow in my negative space. I don't want to get too much, just to suggest that there's a background in here, right? Just to suggest there's a background in here. And this will help to show the edge of that picture better, and also the edge of the pen. I don't want to get it too dark near the top of the picture because I have dark on the top of the picture. Now I take my finger and I blend that in like that. Blend that in. Now you see how that picture stands out better. The side of that picture stands out because I added a little shadow in the background. All right, so we've completed our project, our work of art, or our exercise in drawing. And what do? We're artists, right? So make sure you sign your work. It's always nice to sign it and date it so that you know what year you created it, and you can look back and you can see how you've improved and grown with time. So there it is. There's my name, and there's the year, 2020. All right, I'll bring that in close for you to see. That's our finished project. I will try not to shake too badly. And there you go. There you have it. Our still life, our exercise in tonal drawing. I hope you enjoyed this lesson in class. We're going to continue to work in art until eventually we will work at setting up a painting, and I will show you how I work to do the paintings that I do. So until next time, remember, practice your social distancing, your hand washing. Go outside only if you have to. Try to stay away from people. Things are bad, but they are getting better, and we're going to get through this. We need to be safe, practice personal safety, because by being safe, we protect not only ourselves, but everyone else we love and everyone else we know. So in the meantime, God bless you until we can meet again. Have fun drawing.